So as you can probably tell, I've spent some money on getting you a new view on this, because I realised in my last video how good I was at recording the back of my own wrist, and hopefully this will be much better. Now I'm preparing to glue these bearings in, and to make sure I get a good glue job, I'm going to use some brake components cleaner, electrical contact cleaner, and make sure that I've degreased all the area around where the bearings are going to go. That should take a few seconds to dry out. And I don't know what you do with your super glue, but I like to pop a pin in the top of mine. I find it better than keeping the cap on, unless I can keep it stood up vertically, which I often can't. The pen will keep me the net clear, and it will give me a way to apply the glue. It's my favourite way to apply glue in most slot car applications. I always make sure I've got a rag of some kind nearby. And what am I going to do? Pop these bearings in. Get my rear axle. And give things a little, just give things a circular wobble and a bit of a push. Make sure it's all the way home. Same with this one, give it a little bit of a circular wobble. Looks like we're spinning free. Feels like we're nice and smooth through the middle. Yep, good bearing alignment there. Yeah, that's falling straight through. Take that out as carefully as I can. And now, this is a learned technique. If you adopt it, you'll learn to identify just how big a blob you want on the tip of your pin to do the job you want to do. And you'll find yourself going, oh, that's too big. I'll flick that off onto my cloth and get a smaller blob of glue on my tip, on the tip of the pin. And you can apply really precise amounts in a really precise location when you do that. And there we are. I've gone about halfway around that now. I've got to be very careful here to get only the flange and no glue in the ball or in the bearing, obviously. None on the face of the bearing. Yeah, that looks clear. Do the same on the other side. Yeah, that's halfway around. I find I can fit tyres to wheels. I can do all sorts of things, particularly tyres to wheels actually. With this method I can just seat the tyre on the bead, lift a tiny bit of it back. I just dispensed a little bit of glue there onto my cloth because the blob was too big. Let that sit there. Clean the pin. Back in the bottle. Stand it up vertically. So, next part of the procedure is to check my work. Yeah, that's great. It's very important to make sure that the first bushing, the first thing against the face of your ball bearing race is a very small diameter like this. like this brass shim I've got on there. Because the inner race of the bearing is such a small diameter, you can't go putting a large surface area flat washer or a stopper like that up against the bearing, because it could run on the whole face of the bearing and cause some friction. Now, yeah, the next process is to get the gear mesh aligned. And you can't do that until the motor's in, so we'll put the motor in next. Happy with that for now. Now, this is not exactly the correct motor for my regulations, but it is the right size and shape, and it is carrying the correct pinion that I believe I'm going to want to use when I get to the race meet. And the motor pod here is spacious enough that I can just drop the motor in. And now I need to choose some screws. Personally, I'm a big fan of Torx screws, and I use this T6 Torx wrench made by Wera, W-E-R-A, because I like the quality and the handling of these tools. And what I have here is a 4mm long M2 screw with a Torx head, and I've got a couple of very, very thin, large diameter M2 washers on that screw, because I don't want that screw head to start pulling into the hole in the nylon where I'm going to apply the pressure. So those load spreaders just make that head a bit bigger. And this is tricky. Get this screw in behind the suspension component here. There's the other one. Yes. Find the hole in the motor nice and straight. Yes, there we go. And in the case of the opposite screw, because there's a because this hole is so close to this ball bearing race, I can't actually fit one of those large diameter screw washers because it will interfere with the face of the bearing. There's also a change in angle. This surface is one direction and this surface is a different one, so the screw head wants to go around the corner a little bit. That's why I actually need a screw with a very small diameter head, and the same screw without the washers on I've found is a perfect fit for that side. So there we go, 2 screws. Now I've picked up a nominal set of the right wheels, the right tyres to give me something of the right-ish diameter final build. I've stuck a stopper up the end there, and I've put my first shim on. This one's about 1mm. It's probably going to be more than that come the end of the build. But the important thing that we're doing right now is this side, because this can be a real game, getting the right amount of shims between your bearing and your crown gear. Now, I've actually done this a few times already, a dry build if you like. This is the final build that you're watching, and I found out that about 1mm there, which is that shim you've seen me pop on, and then you have to get the gear into mesh and over the end of the axle, and that can mean retracting the axle quite a bit before it'll go through. Now, this motion here is what sets your gear mesh, and it looks like I need a bit more than 1mm there. I've just popped 1mm in. I'm going to try a bit more. Let's try 2 1mm shims. I can build that. And now my gear only just moves here, only just moves in and out just the tiniest bit. And I can check my gear mesh, and I need to check this 3 or 4 places around the circumference of the spur gear, because although there's a tiny backlash just there, there's absolutely none there. Tiny amount there. No, actually that's too tight. So 2 millimeters behind the gear is too much. And the game here is just to keep changing the amount of shim you've got until you get the mesh that you like. I won't put you through that process, a bit of boredom. I'll pause the video and I'll get back with you when I've got some progress. Okay, so I've had a meddle around with that. I'll just nip that screw a little bit tighter, and I'm happy with the shimming I've got. It's important to check that your mesh is correct in 4 places around your spur gear, like once there, once opposite, and then a quarter turn away, and another half a turn away, or whatever you like. It's also important not to squeeze the bearings between your spur gear and your shim opposite. So the very slightest feeling of motion, if you can see it, it's probably too much, but you'll feel it before you can see it, and that is across the car like that. I can just identify some motion. That will keep the bearings and the pod from being squashed, and a suitable gear mesh. And then I'm going to throw on, a couple of shims on this side to space the wheel away when I find it. There we go. That's why I work on a towel. I don't usually work this high either. But there we are. Pop a shim on, pop a spacer on. I say a shim, I mean a spacer all along. I think I've got about 2.5 millimeters there. And then pop the other wheel on. Now, the big concern, and it's true of all angle winder cars, is that the face of the pinion or the end of the motor shaft will contact the inside edge of your rear tyre. So you always need to get enough of this on here to make sure that that wheel can't get far enough this way for that to be a problem. And mine's very close. I need a little extra. Let's see what I've got here. I've got another 0.5 millimeter here, although it might be more than necessary. Let's pop that on there. Yeah, now we're clear. Get the correct wrench from the other wheel. Just gently nip that up. And yeah, I've got enough clearance between my pinion gear and the side of the tyre. And now it's time to start introducing this to this. And for that, I'll take you to another video. Tune in for the next one. Subscribe to my channel, like the video if you do, and share it with your friends. Thanks.